Hello, I'm Gemma Starr, and welcome to another episode of Heart Warriors. This is a series I've been inspired and guided to do thanks to my energetic connection to Katajuda. Katajuda is the sacred masculine side in Central Australia, very close to Uluru, which is the sacred feminine side. And it's these two energies that are coming through for our divine masculine and feminine in balance and harmony and healing to usher in our beautiful new earth. What I'm here to do is to give a platform to our men so they can speak man to man from the heart about their experience, their journey, their insights, their wisdom, their tools, their practices. What made them into the man they are today, that they can now share this path into the heart with other men, and of course us women that are wanting to get a better insight into the masculine journey. My guest today is a man called Miguel Dean, and he is a sacred union mentor. And I know he does a lot of men's work. He's over there in the UK and he channels as well. So we might have a visit from someone special today as well. So enjoy the show and thank you for being here.
I wanted to read.
Hey, Miguel Dean, welcome to Heart Warriors.
Hello, Gemma. Hello. Thank you very much for inviting me onto your show. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, it feels like a really big, auspicious, sacred occasion this morning. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm feeling those energies too. Whereabout in the UK are you from?
So that's a good question. I'm not really from anywhere. I moved around quite a lot. But where I am now is probably the most important thing, which is I'm in Avalon. I'm in Glastonbury in the heart chakra of the world. And yeah, I arrived here about 2.5 years ago. And yeah, I would say that my life had been pretty interesting before, but when I moved here, things started getting really interesting.
Wow. Is that something you want to go into now, or shall we start earlier on in your life?
You can start wherever you want. Yeah, maybe start somewhere else. I won't stay too long in the earlier part of my life, probably. That feels kind of, it's all pretty much sort of closed up behind now. But obviously, I am also the paradox. I am a product of my past, and also I'm totally new in each moment.
Well, this is the thing. So, first of all, how would you describe the man you are today? And then we'll discover how you got here.
Okay, good question. Thank you. So yeah, this is quite a recent piece. I would describe the man that I am as a very powerful, authentic, caring man. And also I carry a wounded boy. There is still some healing to be done there as a result of the death of my mother when I was a baby and the abuse from my stepmother. So that's also part of me. I am Cernunnos is another higher aspect of who I am, the Horned God. And yeah, it's just becoming more and more apparent, that question of who are you and who am I? You know, we could spend the whole show talking about that one. I am everything and I am nothing, and I am discovering and remembering and awakening to who I am.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you. So let's start off in your childhood. You've already mentioned the loss of your mother. Are you okay to talk about that? Can we open up that subject a little bit?
Yeah, we can talk about whatever you like.
Thank you. So what was your greatest challenge around the loss of your mother?
The greatest challenge around the loss of my mother has been the challenge of having intimate relationships with women. Because that huge wound that I experienced, my mother died when I was 7 months old of cancer. I have a strong knowing that while she was carrying me in the womb, she was in a lot of pain. She had a slipped disc and had depression, and she had lots of small children already. And on some level, there was the Catholic thing of no contraception and so on. And so on some level, it was the last thing that she needed to get pregnant again with everything that she was carrying already. And so I know there was a sense of, I'm a burden and I cause pain to woman, and that I'm not loved, I'm not chosen, I shouldn't be here. That kind of energy, has been around me. And it took a long time. It's taken a long, long time to sort of arrive at this point where really being able to unearth and discover that there is this pain and this anger and this fear that has been deep inside me that equates intimacy and closeness with the feminine with extreme pain. So this feeling and this energy that got wired into my nervous system, into my body so young, has been quite a challenge to clear. And I'm somebody who learns through relationships. So I have had a few relationships. I was married for about 15 years, the mother of my children. And gradually through the course of the relationships, which were often roller coaster rides, there was this gradual unfolding and understanding of what was active in me and what was sabotaging the relationship. So there was this real paradox of, I want to be close to woman. I want to complete that which I didn't get completed as a child. I didn't get the love. I didn't get that tenderness. I didn't get that I am the center of your world kind of like feeling, which is what a child needs in order for them to have a solid foundation to go into the world. So unconsciously, I was trying to find that through my relationships with women. And of course, I was attracting women that had a huge father wound to match my huge mother wound. So they had massive distrust and fear of the masculine, while deep inside me was this massive fear and distrust of the feminine. So as you can imagine, that's quite a tricky dance to navigate. Lots of humility, growth in self-awareness, and 25 years I've been on this path. It was 25 years ago that I began, and realizing that it wasn't the world. I couldn't change things on the outside. It was an inside job. I had to go inside, and that I was carrying a lot of pain. Yeah.
Miguel, how did you start that journey 25 years ago, trying to heal this mother wound? Where did you start?
I started with a counselor. That was the beginning for me. It was kind of, a little bit more traditional or known in circles that if you were, excuse my French, but it's the best word, if you're fucked up, then it's a good idea to go and talk to somebody. And I guess the precursor to that was pain. It was pain. I was living on the road as a new age traveler at the time, and my partner had fallen pregnant, and we had a little boy, and we were still living on the road. And I'd hoped that the birth of this son was going to make everything better, and all of a sudden I'd feel like a man, I'd be a father, and all this kind of stuff. But it actually made things worse, because there was all this kind of jealousy and fear came up that all of a sudden this little baby's getting my woman's attention. And as much as I was embarrassed and kind of ashamed of that kind of little boy inside me just became very obnoxious and not nice to be around. So it became quite apparent quite quickly that my partner and my son might be better off without me, because I just felt like I was depressed, I was angry, I was emotional, I was so insecure. And I tried lots of sort of little tweaks, if you like, but nothing worked. And I was terrified, but I'd said, if nothing else works, I will even go and see a counselor. So that's what I did, with no real expectation that it was going to make anything different. It was like, there's this huge pain inside me. How is having a chat with somebody really going to help? I didn't believe in it at all, really. But this man who was an angel, who appeared for me as a counselor, yeah, just by listening and just asking some questions, and I began to realize that all of my pain was connected to my childhood and what I had experienced as a child. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning. And yeah, that was the beginning of going really into the pain, because in the first few counseling sessions, I just became covered from head to toe in this red sore itchiness, because all the emotion that had been blocked and suppressed in my body started to come to the surface as I began to talk about what I'd experienced as a child, and began to realize it wasn't okay and it wasn't normal, sort of thing, and it would have a detrimental effect on me. Yeah.
Amazing. What would you say to men who are realizing that they have a mother wound, either through death or abandonment or rejection? Now, where would you suggest they start?
There's a good book, which I haven't read because I don't read, but it's called When He's Married to Mom. And that's a very powerful book. Quite a few of my clients have read it, and it's been very helpful. So that would be a good starting place, just to kind of understand and kind of see, to what extent um, that you are carrying a mother wound. Because you see, what seems to have happened on this planet is because because men have been, if you like, their wings have been clipped. All of the potential of what it is to be a man has just been narrowed down to be, you have to be a good man, you just be a provider. And all the rest of the nobility and honor and beauty of the masculine has been, left out. And so because of that, for the most part, there is no, what I would call, sacred masculine on the planet. There is a lack of this energy of pure, clean, templated masculine energy. So the women have had to take on the burden, if you like, or take on the role of being the masculine as well, and being that space and holding that space. So in that place of the masculine, because their partners, the men aren't able to hold space for them, aren't able to deal with emotion, aren't able to deal with vulnerability and so on, then many mothers become energetically married to their sons, and they offload all of their emotion onto their boys. And so the son becomes energetically married to the mother, and he believes that his purpose is to make sure that everything is okay externally with the adults, with the grown-ups who are supposed to be looking after him. But because the parents are children in adults' bodies, he takes on that role. And so he never gets any of his childhood needs met. And he grows up believing that his role is to look after everybody else before himself, especially women, although underneath that desire to serve and to put others first is this rage and this anger and this fear that lies deep down, usually buried under a load of spiritual bypassing or whatever other means that we find to bury this pain.
That's so true. I mean, I think we've all got some degree of mother wound and father wound, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Have you got
Yes.
any practical tools apart from counseling? And I love this book that you recommended, that people can start. Maybe people can't afford to go to counseling, but people can start that inner search and that inner feeling into what these wounds are and how they might go about healing them.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I always reckon, and obviously without doing a big publicity thing for Miguel, but yeah, people are welcome to get in touch with me. This is what I specialize in for men and with women. We have to heal the mother and father wounds if we're to come back to sacred union within ourselves, to the divine marriage of the masculine and feminine. But to answer your question, inner child work is a really good starting place to start reconnecting with your inner child. I always encourage clients to get a photo of themselves when they were little, put it on their altar, put it somewhere sacred, somewhere special, and make time every day to check in with their inner child and start creating a relationship with them, just speaking to them, letting them know that they're safe, letting them know that we're doing things differently, that kind of reassuring sort of talk. So inner child stuff is a good tool. And there are three areas: your boundaries, honoring yourself, and I always forget the third one. They all three sort of merge together. The other one will probably come. But boundaries and saying no. If you're not good at saying no to other people, it's the people pleaser thing, and that it's not okay to honor myself and put my own needs first, and that, you know, need for external validation all the time at the expense of honoring ourselves. So if you know that you're a yes person and you find it difficult to say no, that's a good indication that you're carrying this wound. Honoring yourself is another key one, again, to action, that you are putting yourself first, that you are honoring yourself. So doing the morning practice where you are spending time just loving you and doing things that are just good for you is a really good way to start the day. So those are a couple of, you know, sort of indicators and tools that you can start doing, just learning to say no, learning about your boundaries and what's okay and what isn't, and learning to spend time with your inner child, and learning to honor yourself, do things that really communicate self-love, not out of obligation or, you know, beating yourself with a big stick, but things that are that nourish you. Yeah.
That's so good. Miguel, let's jump into your adulthood now. What would you say was your deepest, darkest time? What was happening? Where were you? How old were you?
The first thing that comes to mind straight away was leaving my family home, leaving my wife and my two sons. That was that was a deep pain. I often find that, well, I don't know how much everybody finds this, but you know, the idea of doing something, you just never know how it's going to be until you actually do it. And it had been building for me quite a long time that we needed to go our separate ways. My attention was wandering, and I didn't want to be in that situation where somebody else was in the dynamic. And yeah, I remember just you know, just sobbing and crying as I packed a few things into my car and just loaded it up, you know, with some of my things, and just closing the front door of what had been the home, you know, with my two sons and my wife, and just driving away. And just because, you see, the ending of every relationship always triggered all my mother wound. The ending of every relationship with a woman would bring up all the pain of the death of my mother, and the deaths, really, because I was looked after by a few different women for a period of time before I was reunited with my father and my stepmother. So that was the darkest time. Yeah, that was really painful. That was just, yeah, you know, the massive wound of leaving my sons and my wife in that present moment, and on top of that, just a whole heap. It was like it opened the door as wide as it had ever been to feel the full extent of all that grief that I hadn't been able to express at the death of my mother.
So how old were your sons at the time?
My youngest was about 7 and my eldest was about 14.
Were you going away a long way, or were you able to keep seeing them?
No, I didn't go a long way. It was very clear to me that the impact of the divorce would have as little negative impact on my sons as possible. So I just moved up the road, and I stayed up the road until they were, till I moved to Glastonbury. Really, I stayed close by so that they could come and, you know, spend weekends, and that we could see each other, and I could give them lifts to their football matches and all that sort of stuff. I wanted, you know, partly because of the goodness of I'm a decent guy, and I didn't want. I knew about divorce, and I knew, you know, how it can be done in many different ways, and I didn't want it to impact my sons, largely because I guess I was carrying enough guilt already about putting myself first and feeling I have to leave. This is going to benefit my sons as well. But it felt very selfish. It was still sort of that program of everybody else comes first. So it was, it took a long time for me to pluck up the courage to make that step. And I guess perhaps in some ways it was the first time that I really put myself first. And of course, the challenge with that is when you do put yourself first, sometimes what you'll experience is extreme pain because it's so out of alignment with the story that's running inside us that says we put everybody else first. The ego kind of freaks out and goes, what are you doing? Like, this isn't right. This is bad. So it's like loads of pain to try and stop you doing that and keep with the known.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? You have to put yourself first sometimes, but that that's causing pain to other people, even if it is the best case scenario, as you had now with your wife and your son. So I'm interested to explore fatherhood. What's your proudest moment as a father?
Delivering my sons. I was there at the birth of both of them. And yeah, this connects with the magic and everything that's begun unfolding in the last few years, really. But my firstborn son, just for any viewers know, my body moves. My kundalini is very active, and when I talk about certain things, the energy starts moving through me. So what I'm trying to say is that my firstborn son was born under a full moon in a field, in a bender, in a makeshift dwelling under an oak tree. And I now understand that that was a very sacred birth because he has work to do. He is my son, and he will carry on this work and this excuse me, this magic that is unfolding. So that was the midwives came. There were midwives who came, but I was there when he was birthed. I was the first one to hold him, and the same happened with my second born son. He was born in a house. We'd moved into a house then. That was a really beautiful moment, and the magic was there then. It's because what happened was just before I had a dog, and it was early in the morning, and my wife went into labor, and we said, let's I better take the dog for a walk because we don't know how long the labor is going to go on, and let's just sort her out and then we can do our thing. And when I got back, when I was out walking, just round the back of the house where there never had been before, there was a horse tethered, and its back leg had the tether all wrapped around it, and it was all tangled in the tether. So I stopped and I set it free and cleared it. And then when I got back to the house, my wife the labor was really moving quick, and the midwives hadn't arrived yet. So she went and sort of assumed position and so on, and out he popped. It was just me and her in the living room, and out he popped into my hands. But the crazy thing was that the umbilicum cord was wrapped around his leg. And it was just like what had happened with the horse was just a precursor, a little warning, a sort of trial run, so that I didn't panic and that I was okay with it. It's like it's kind of let me know what was coming. And just as I was kind of thinking, okay, he's a bit slippy, and to hold him with one hand and try and untangle it, I don't want to drop him. And then the midwife popped her head around the door and said, "Oh, you've started without me, have you?" So she helped untangle. But those are my two proudest moments, yeah, for sure. The birthing of my two boys.
It's beautiful. I have two boys too.
Nice.
Miguel, what advice have you got for men who are in the process of separating from their family? A lot of families are separating now due to, different levels of awakening or different values around what's happened the last 2 years, 3 years. What advice have you got for men having walked through it now and your sons are grown? What are you going to say to those men to help them?
Oh, so yeah, the first thing is honor the children. Remember the children. If there are children involved, they are the innocents. They just be mindful of them, because what happens in the divorce will have a massive effect on their journey. And at the same time, there is also the knowing that our children have signed up to be born to the parents that they're born to, and it's also part of their journey to go through, an experience of parents divorcing. But that doesn't mean that we just do it as messy as possible and go, oh, they signed up for it, so let's just crack on with it. Our children, I think, are the first thing that should be honored. And that's difficult, because what's usually happening in a divorce is that the inner childs are going to be massively activated within the parent. That's why they're separating in the first place, because on some level there is this paradox of really wanting to be close, and intimacy and connection and oneness and union, that is who we are and what we come from. But on the other hand, the inner child invariably will be terrified and scared of intimacy and that closeness, because they will have had experiences of pain as a result of that as well. So honor the children, recognize that what is happening is part of your spiritual journey. It's not something separate. It's not like a mix-up. It's not something that's just gone wrong and just needs to be got through as quickly as possible. It's part of your growth. And look inside. It's so easy to project our pain onto the other person and think it's their fault, but you will receive the gold from the painful experience if you look inside and see what this experience, where the root of this pain is, because it won't be about what's happening in the present with the divorce. There will be a deeper reservoir of pain and trauma that is also being accessed.
Beautiful. Thank you. Where do emotions come into this, and feeling the pain of the past? Is that necessary for men to delve into those childhood moments and relive them? Or do you suggest something else to actually be in touch with feelings and pain? Miguel? Yeah, so I think, Miguel, you got that question around men and emotions and feeling. What have you got to say about that?
Yeah. Oh, I've got loads to say about that. I'll try and keep it concise. But yeah, this journey is a journey back to our hearts. The greatest journey we will ever take is this small distance from our head back to our hearts. We have to reconnect with our hearts, and this is part of how our wings have been clipped. The statement that big boys should not cry is probably one of the most damaging and the most cruel statements that has ever been made, to shut people down, to shut men down, to shut boys down from feeling, and to make it out that, it's not manly to have emotions. It's not manly to be vulnerable, to feel pain. I would argue with that strongly, and I would say it's the greatest strength that a warrior can have is his vulnerability, his ability to be broken, to be open, to be on his knees, and still recognize that he is a warrior and that he is a man. So I feel it's a really key part of the healing is accessing our hearts. And what's happened is that we have energetic armoring grows all around our hearts to protect us from the pain that we have experienced from this lunatic asylum society that we live in at the moment. So yes, you must have the courage to feel now what you weren't able to feel then, because all those emotions are what blocks up our meridians. They block up our body. They result in cancer. They result in all the diseases. Is mostly a result of stress and the blockage of energy. So when we feel these emotions, and when we have the courage to be that broken child as well as the strong man, then alchemy really starts happening, and we start unblocking all the meridians, all the energy in our systems. That clears our filters, and we start seeing everything differently. We can start seeing all the craziness that was hidden in plain sight. So it's absolutely essential to reconnect with our hearts. That is, we live in a civilization that is run by the head. The heart and the head together are a beautiful and powerful duo, often, seen as the masculine and feminine, the mind more masculine and the heart more feminine. So the reason the world is in the place that it is in is it because it is led by men or leaders or humans, using the term loosely because we can't really confirm that all are human, but leaders, these people with power that are just in their heads. So they haven't got the sort of that check of their hearts, that feeling, because if they were connected to their hearts, they wouldn't be able to make the decisions and do the things that are being carried out by these heads that are full of trauma themselves, that are totally distorted and not seeing clearly anything themselves. So the journey back to the emotions, us men have been carrying so much shame and guilt around feeling weak and crying and feeling vulnerable. So one of the most powerful medicines I have for that is Men's Circle. I run a Men's Circle here in Avalon every week on a Wednesday night, and we sit in circle together and we cry and we laugh and we share our pain and we share the struggles that we are having. And we all see that we are all living different versions of the same story, and that there is nothing to be ashamed of when we share our vulnerability, when we share the fullness of who we are, and we are received only with love and compassion and acceptance. That is a great way of healing that wound of big boys don't cry. It's okay, but you have to find a safe container. You have to find somewhere safe. I don't get in touch with my emotions terribly easily. Certain things I do, but for the most part, my journey has been that I have to feel safe. I have to be with people that I feel safe with, and then my body just opens and I can access all those places inside. While we're running with fear, we can't access that. We have to have a safe space in order to do the work. And that was one of the things I realized 25 years ago when I began my journey. I was living on the road, but I had a strong knowing I need to move into a house. I need somewhere safe that feels secure and that I can lock the door if I'm going to be vulnerable and start going into these places. So safety is really key. Safety comes first, and then the courage to go to those places. And there are many tools that if they're not flowing initially, there are breath work and there are plant medicines and trauma release things. There are all sorts of powerful tools that we now have access to that can help get the process moving. But I guess the last thing I would say, the other key ingredient for the alchemy is commitment, is a deep commitment to doing this work, because it's not the work for the faint of heart. It's warrior work, and it's a long journey. It can be a long journey, but it's what you came here to do. All the stuff about a job and a purpose, it's like, don't worry too much about that. You came here to clear your ancestral line. You came here to clear all that trauma that was passed from father to son, down through the generations. And you are the brave souls that have come to clear that, to do that, so that we can birth the new earth and create a more beautiful world for the children and the generations to come.
Oh, I love that. It's so beautiful. Miguel, from your observation of this men's circle that you run, what's the deepest collective wound happening with our men at the moment?
Enmeshment with their mothers. Well, what I talked about earlier, that is I would say 90% of the men that come to circle are experiencing extreme pain because of that wound. And it sounds quite light in a way, but there are men that are killing themselves because of this wound, because it creates these incredible anxiety inside the body, and it all eventually manifests as severe mental health issues. And so, I know two men who killed themselves recently, and enmeshment was a big part of what was going on. This wound is so deep, and it's it interacts so just dovetails in kind of thing to the majority of woman's wound around the father wound. So there's this massive mistrust of the women not trusting the men and the men not trusting the women. This enmeshment is, so women want little boys instead of men because they feel safer, because they're doing the masculine and there isn't room for another man. They want a man to take the reins and to be a man and to lead, but the little girl inside them is terrified because the masculine always let them down before. So all this stuff creates such a tangled web. And it's what we all crave, it is union and oneness and closeness, but it's just made so difficult. And it's like, you know, often the more that they try, if they're just trying in their relationships, it's just more and more pain and more lost in this sense of I'm alone and I can't connect with another human being. I just seem to mess it up all the time.
This mother enmeshment, can you give us a solid example of what that looks like? Like, you know, I mean, we've spoken about it, but give us an everyday example of how that might play out in a family dynamic.
So it will usually play out that the father is absent. Either he's not there physically, it's a single parent family, or he is not present. He's not able to access his heart or his emotions. He is just a talking head. So he's not present. He's kind of there physically. And often that's even more confusing for a child, because it's like you're physically there, but I can't reach you. And the child will always understand that as it's my fault, and that the parent is withholding connection with them because there's something wrong with them. The child always thinks, well, they're the grown-ups, they're the adults, they must be doing it right. It must be me that's got it wrong. So that's the kind that will happen. The father is absent in order for this to happen, either physically or emotionally. The mother will usually be, there will be anxiety and fear because she will have inherited that from, you know, from her father, because we're all immersed in fear and anxiety. That's what this program is all about, that's running in society. And so, but she has, instead of being able to share her fear and have space held for her by her partner because he's not there, then it's all leaking out all the time, this anxiety, this fear, this emotion. And the boy will often be cuddled. You know, the mother will take the child and kind of give her pain to the boy, because the child is open and is kind of porous, they will absorb that pain, because they will see that if they absorb that pain, then mother becomes more stable again. And so it becomes, you know, it's more safe, so that the boy takes on the role of I've got to take care of the grown-ups, and he will be hyper vigilant, perhaps looking for father's anger, or, you know, the aggression between the two, or lack of connection. So he's always hyper vigilant, looking for incoming danger, or, you know, to whether he's safe. And the reason why that's so powerful and so deep is because that wound interprets into the primal brain that if I don't take care of the grown-ups, I will die, because they are my carers, and the primal brain understands they provide food and shelter, which are essential to stay alive, to survive. And the child is launched into this role of, I'm the one that's got to make sure that there's food and shelter. And the only way I can do that is doing my best to regulate my parents, regulate these grown-ups that are around me. And if I don't do that, I will die, because they will fall apart and there will be no food and shelter. That's how it translates into the primal brain, why it's such a deep wound. So the child then grows up with this, carrying this deep wound of fear and pain, and that the world isn't a safe place. And so we attract all that into our lives to perpetuate the story. Does that help?
Fascinating. That paints a very clear picture. And I guess it's also happens with daughters as well, does it?
Absolutely.
And I imagine the daughter then would have to step into her masculinity, because, you know, providing, protecting, making sure the household is at peace.
Yes.
So, very clear now. Thank you.
And sometimes the father will marry the daughter. You know, there's that kind of healthy thing of you're my little princess and you're the center of my world, that can be a very beautiful thing. And in a way, a little girl needs that to be the queen of her father. But then there is a separating, and and her going her own way. But because the father can't connect with the mother because of his wounds and the dynamic that's going on there, he will often, what I call, suckle feminine energy from the purity of the little girl. And often that becomes infused with a frustrated, latent sexual energy as well from the man. So he may not be sexual with his daughter at all, but the feeling of attraction and towards that beautiful feminine and that softness that he can't access with his partner is also a very common wound and a very common thing that happens.
And I guess there'd be a lot of guilt and shame behind that. He's aware enough not to act on it, but if he's having these feelings and he knows that they're not right, he's going to live in that guilt and shame around that. Have you got anything to expand on in that conversation?
Well, yeah, I mean, that is what happens. And I've had our sexual energy, our understanding of sex and this energy it's so lacking, for want of a stronger word. To me, it feels like for the most part, it's the opposite of the truth. So all this suppression of sexual energy and this demonizing of sexual energy and sex and intimacy, it's dirty and rude and all that sort of stuff, means that these things can't be talked about. And I have had men who have come to me and have confessed that they have had thoughts, or that they have had, maybe sometimes really minor incidents with a sister or something like that, because all this sexual energy in the families is all distorted and it's not clear. There isn't a clear template, a clear model of how to be with it. And these men are often with so much pain and so much guilt and shame, and because of what happened when they were young in their families, or also, because they have had those feelings when they've grown up around their daughters. And I have experienced that myself with a stepdaughter that I had. It was really alarming, but there was this real strong attraction that I could feel that was present, with my girlfriend's daughter. And when I look back, I can see, because I couldn't access, because I'd chosen a girlfriend that had a deep father wound and her heart was closed, and I couldn't access any of that feminine, that softness, it wasn't there. So the natural thing is we start just noticing that it feels nicer somewhere else. So it's quite a tangle. It's a complicated mess that we've got ourselves into. But the key to untangling it is the courage to have the awareness and to own our part. And because all of this stuff was done to us to a certain extent, we were born into this energy. There's so many people that I work with that, there is sexual distortion comes through the generations, the same. And so again, we're infused, as children, as adults living in this world, we're infused with distorted sexual energy. So we're not fully responsible for the situation as it is, but we are responsible for doing our work and clearing that from our line and clearing that from our own systems.
I was going to say, Miguel, in your professional experience, if a man was to come to you and say, look, I've been having these feelings for my daughter, for example, but I haven't acted on them, but I feel so guilt and shame, and what can I do? Where would you direct him to start healing?
I direct him inside himself, I guess, mostly. And, and with the precursor being to share what I've just shared with you, that, that you're not fully responsible for this that is happening, that is present, but it is something that you have inherited, and you have the power to clear it from your system now. So as soon as, because generally that's the majority of the guilt and shame is because it's a secret. It can't be shared with anybody. As soon as it's shared for the first time, there's a massive clearing and a massive relief. I often will, if men come for a retreat with me or for a bit longer, then I will use some plant medicine as well, which can help a physical purge. So it helps clear, really, a deeper clear from the body of all that shame and guilt. So once you can see it clearly and you can see the truth, rather than the shame and guilt can only be perpetuated by the false, by the lies, by the story that this is all my fault, I've done something wrong. As soon as we understand that there is more to the picture than that, then there's a bit of a relax, and then there's okay, then there's something that I can do about this. It's actually come up in a way, there is a blessing in it. If it's come up and you're aware of it, then we can clear it. If it's happening in the dark and happening unconsciously, as it is still in many places, unfortunately, that we can't work with it then. But as soon as it's up, then the light of consciousness will do its work to begin dissolving it. And then it's largely about the mindfulness. When the mind goes into the loop of, I've done this wrong, I'm bad, I should be ashamed, whatever, it's like, whoa, is that the truth? Is that the full truth? Let's choose a different story that's more accurate.
So in your experience, men have healed from this experience while their daughters are still relatively young? There can be a shift?
Yeah.
Or does it remain and you just learn to control it? How does it play out?
Yeah, I can't say that I have any, really clear sort of case studies from beginning to end to give a really, accurate response to that. But my sense is that you can't be aware of it and just keep it under control. That's an illusion. It's still playing out. It will still be playing out, and the fact that you're just trying to keep it under control suggests that the shame and the guilt and the fear of owning it and being open about it and actually taking responsibility for it is still greater, than your desire to be the best father for your daughter. So it has to be cleared. You can't just like, it's there, but I'm not going to do anything about it. It's like accessing it and finding a therapist or finding somebody that is always a good start, just to be able to start speaking about it, because in that reflection, we will start seeing more and we will start understanding more.
That's beautiful. Okay, thank you for that, because that is an important subject. And as you said, it's often a secretive one. So seeing it came up, I wanted the opportunity to explore it as much as we could in your professional experience. We got about 40 minutes left, and I know there's someone else that I'm pretty sure is keen to come in. Would you like to introduce him and tell us about him?
Okay, yeah. So in a way, the best way to introduce him is to read a piece, and that I wrote this, or it was written through me 4 or 5 years ago, and I now understand that it was quite sort of prophetic. I didn't really understand at the time what I was writing. In many ways, it kind of felt like I was sort of making it up. It just kind of felt right, and it just came through, and I now kind of understand that's what they call channeling. So I wrote this piece, which is called "Who is the Horned God?" And that's probably a good way to just introduce Cernunnos, who is, he is a high god of the Celts, of the Celtic people, and he is about dark, primal, masculine energy. He's about the sacred darkness. It's kind of like, it feels sometimes like a masculine reflection of the void, or the great mother, the great mystery, that darkness, the womb. So I'll read that piece first. That's probably a good starting place. You may have some questions, and yes, Cernunnos will want to come through, and I will share It's often called light language, but I don't like that, especially Cernunnos doesn't like it. It's more light, dark language, because I don't like it. I'm very much about embracing the darkness, embracing the shadow. That has been a huge catalyst in my journey home to the heart. So yeah, it's a light, dark language that will come through. If people that have a Catholic background might be a little bit alarmed, because that does sometimes happen. And there was something else that I wanted to share. Yeah, people may find that they drop into a kind of slightly altered state, or that they have, an experience as a result of hearing the transmission. And my encouragement would be, don't worry about the words, because you won't understand the words. It's not in English, it's an ancient language, but it's about the frequency, it's the vibration of the language that I'm understanding, that is really where the medicine and the power and the magic lies. So I'll shut up, and I'm going to read this piece. But before I do that, can I just ask you to just pause our recording for a moment?
Okay, take it away.
So this is the piece that came through me a few years ago. Who is the horned god, you ask? Well, I am of the deep, dark, primal energy that resides within both you and the earth. In the hidden depths and uncharted realms within you, I have slumbered, waiting for my time. Banished for hundreds of years by the lies of the church, my name and honor was defiled through fear-based distortions, associating me with evil and carnal delights, and claims that I was a devilish being. But the truth cannot remain hidden forever. For I am he who walks the land as guardian and protector of all that is sacred and born of the mother, the four-leggeds, the winged ones, the crawlers and creepers and swimmers are all my kin. My passion is the thrill of the wild hunt, and you may hear my horn sound on the wind at times as I thunder barefoot through the hills and forests of both the seen and unseen realms. Listen out for it, for I may be hunting you, beckoning you to rewild yourself. Run or surrender. The choice is not really yours. I rest from my hunting exploits on the edge of the dark forest, in a sunlit clearing, waiting to accompany those who are ready to live both worlds of desire and pleasure, and responsibility and honor, to live a life unshackled by civilization's distortions, lies, taboos, and dictates. I am the explosion of testosterone that erupts when that which you hold dear is threatened, and I will bellow my truth when my righteous anger is called forth. I am her lover and her servant, and her bliss is my bliss. For making cosmic love is our communion in the endless dance and cycles of death and rebirth. You will find me walking beside you when you travel the shadowlands of your initiations and rites of passage, and I will raise you up each time you return and are reborn from her dark womb. I have lain asleep in the hearts of many men, though there is a restlessness of late, and many are awakening, confused and disorientated as they emerge from the grey, invisible bars of their domesticated slavery. As you remember and honor my presence in your being, your nobility and integrity will return and be your guiding light. And you will increasingly feel in the raw sensations of your body an aliveness that you had not thought possible. You will embody a gentle strength and stand taller than ever before. When you walk under the infinite sky with me, your eyes will witness miracle upon miracle, and you will wonder where you end and the rest of what you perceive begins. I am in the flickering fire that burns away the night. I am the voice of your ancestors on the wind. I am the power and the determination of the mountain stream. I dance and sing with the mushroom beings under the moon and allow my body to move with wild abandon. On all fours, I love to burrow my face into the earth's moist fecundity, and I breathe her in. If you let go of the ideas of who you thought you were and surrender to all that you are, you will feel my presence. The time is right. The time is now. It is the time of the awakening of the horned God. For without his blessing, a man cannot rest fully in his sovereignty. And she will settle for nothing less than a king to be at her side.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So, as I said, that was a piece that came through 4 or 5 years ago. Little did I know what was to come. So, yeah, I had a knowing in my journey, my recent journey, to transcend fear and to transcend the illusion of death. I've been working more closely with plant medicines and plant medicines that can help me totally let go where there is an ego death and Miguel disappears and the rest of the truth of who he is becomes more apparent. So I had this knowing that I needed to surrender more fully to death, and I needed to do what they call a committed dose of psilocybin. So I prepared myself. I enlisted a good friend of mine who that's his work. He holds space for ceremonies, for plant medicine ceremonies. And I enlisted him to hold space and do a private ceremony with me. And in the second half of that monumental experience, my body was taken over by Cernunnos. And he began to speak through me for the first time. And I didn't know what it was, but my friend said after the trip, he said, that sounded like the horned God to me. And I said, what? And he said, that's what it sounded like to me. And there was this little voice inside my head that said, yeah, it is. But do your research. And I don't do research. I stopped reading and writing many years ago, which I also now understand is a result of Cernunnos, because the Celtic tradition is an oral tradition and they didn't write anything down because they knew that the magic could be distorted and messed with once it was put into written language. So that's why there is so little written about the Celts. So he came through the research. I said, okay, I'll do a bit of research. And I found this podcast and this American woman talking in this annoying accent about this Celtic high god. And I was like, oh God, this is irritating me. And it was like, keep listening, keep listening. And there were two things that she said that confirmed that it was Cernunnos. And the first was what she said, that he's usually depicted with the legs of a goat and hooves. But that's not accurate, because instead of legs, he has two serpents. And when I was lying with the medicine, I was aware that that my legs were moving like serpents, my hips. I thought initially it was just the Kundalini stuff moving. But now I see that, yeah, my legs were totally serpents. They were just writhing the whole time. And my hips were my body was moving in a way that I don't know that it's possible to move. So that confirmed. And then there was another piece that she said about Cernunnos being the Lord of the Hunt. And he is symbol, is the stag, the horned god, the antlers, the symbol of the masculine virility and that power and the strength of the masculine. And in that moment, I realized and I remembered that I had unknowingly committed a sacred initiation when I was about 23 years old, because I'd been living on a remote island off the west coast of the Scottish Highlands. And I had gone out one day hunting with my dogs and I had killed a stag with my knife. And with the dogs. And that was the initiation. That was the time that Cernunnos entered me. And now when I look back, I can see all the patterns and see all the little things that started happening in me, the rewilding, this knowing in me that I had to rewild myself, stop using products and let my hair do what it wanted to do, and just become more attuned with the earth and the natural ways. So that was the confirmation that it was indeed Cernunnos, and that people were always saying to me, "You've got something about the horned god about you," and I was just kind of like, "Oh, it's a bit of a gimmick," and it, yeah, okay, I'll go along with it, kind of thing. But it was all a bit too woo-woo for me until the mushrooms opened the portal for me to understand more deeply. So I guess, no, let me pause. Gemma, is there anything that you would like to share, or anything that you would like to reflect? I know that I've been speaking for quite a while before the transmission comes through.
I was just wondering if you had looked into the origins of Cernunnos, and if you'd been able to uncover anything that hadn't come through in the initial transition. You know, what sort of time period are we talking about? Were there other gods? Like when we use the term God for Cernunnos, how does that compare to what most people might refer to as God in a spiritual sense? You know, as the universe, or as consciousness, as love. What's the differentiation there?
So the first most honest answer is I don't know, because I choose not to know. I've renounced knowledge, really. I've renounced knowings, which is why I don't read, or why I don't write really anymore, or I don't listen to. Yeah, I don't access knowledge through words, because my understanding is that there's so much corruption in our language, in the words. There has been a lot of, it's not called spelling, you know, by accident. Our language is full of dark spells that keep us kind of shackled, yeah, to this paradigm and to one version of reality. So that's why I'm not interested in knowledge. I don't need to know anything about Cernunnos. All I need to do is just allow him to come through more. And he is coming through more as I clear more trauma from my body, which I'm always working on. The last pieces down the left side of my feminine side, the right side is all totally activated, and most of the left side is. There is some final clearing that is being done around the heart. And Cernunnos comes through more and more. Often when I just sit in the evenings, my legs just move like serpent's legs. They just kind of sort of twitch and just sort of move like this. So it's not to know anything. I don't know. My knowledge now comes from the ley lines. I go to the power spots, to the places where I feel the energy just bathes my body and shimmers through. And I go to the trees, and then I go to the stones that hold keys and codes. These are my accesses for knowledge now. So I don't know too much about Cernunnos. And the thing about gods, maybe the word archetype is probably more helpful for some people. Is a masculine archetype, an archetype as an aspect of what it is to be a man, that aspect that is the protector of the wild, of the mother, and also of that primal sacred energy, that primal sexual sensual energy that we've been so shamed and, you know, and told to is bad and dirty and so on. So it's that love of, he has the potential to purify all this distorted sexual energy that is resulting in so many abominations taking place on this planet, and he is fucking angry about what is taking place. Yeah.
So sorry, if you need to go into the transmission, just do it. If not, I'll just ask another question. May I?
Ask another question, of course. Yeah, if Cernunnos can learn to be patient.
So if men are watching this and they're like, well, yeah, I really relate to that. I'd like to be able to connect in with Cernunnos and this wild primal energy that, you know, I really want to feel into and explore. How can a man do that?
Spend time with the mother, spend time on the earth, spend time on the land, sleep on the land. There was certainly a time I did a vision quest and spent 3 nights fasting and sleeping on the land out under the stars, and something shifted in my body in that, a deeper love and honoring of the mother of the land. I just fell so in love with the land. So if you fall in love with the land, it's a good way to start. Walk barefoot, allow the vibration of her to feel you, to bathe your body, because even if you can't feel it, now that so much trauma is cleared from my body is so sensitive to energy, and I can feel all these places that people said, oh, you can get some, that's healing and that's good. And I was always like, that's a bit weird and a bit woo-woo. And really, it's like my body is a tool now, and I can measure, what's going on. So just walking on the land, being at the sacred sites is also, because those sacred sites are usually where ley lines meet and conjoin, and there are powerful energy places there. So spend times in those places. Take notice of the stag. People who are connected with Cernunnos will often find that they have an affinity with deer and the stag. So it's a good indication. I can be driving down a motorway, down a highway, and my head will be turned, and I will just see 2 deer just stepping into the forest at the side of the road or something as I'm whizzing past at 80 miles an hour. It's like I see them and they see me. There is a connection with the deer, because that is Cernunnos' totem. That is one of my power animals, one of my allies. So these are the ways really to honor, rewild yourself. Stop putting all these crazy poisonous products on your face, and these products to cover up our natural smell. Our natural smell is beautiful. It's who we are. We are animal and we are angel. We are divine. We are all of it. It's about embracing our messiness, our animalness, our primalness, all this ascension and all this new age going higher, and it's all lovely and fluffy and light. It's like, fuck all that. Like, yeah, it has its place, but it has to come in balance with this. Let's get down into the earth. Let's get down into the beauty, into the darkness.
Especially
Yes.
as groundedness is a real masculine quality as well, isn't it? Yeah, that's great to connect. And Charlie Freak said something interesting about the same topic, but in a different way. He said the word together. To get her was the way to heal the masculine.
Nice.
The same thing that you're saying, but yeah, so fascinating. I was going to ask you, we've got about 20 minutes left, what else you wanted to bring into this conversation? And I know Cernunnos still wants to come in. So for the next 20 minutes, have you got anything else that needs to come in, either around men, masculinity, your own journey, or does Cernunnos want to come through?
Yeah, my sense is let's let Cernunnos speak, and then we'll see what arises from that transmission, because it'll be interesting to see how you receive it. And yeah, if you can, I know that you're kind of working, but if you can drop in and just receive it as fully as possible, it might take you a few seconds, to come back. I would say don't rush if you do drop a little deeper. Yeah, because it feels like a really big thing. I would like to ask the people who watch, if anybody is watching and also has a connection or knows anybody that's channeling Cernunnos. I'm really fascinated. I don't know if if it's just me here in the heart chakra, whether it's happening here because it's meant to be happening just here, in Avalon in the heart chakra. And I actually live in King Arthur's court. It's called King Arthur's court, and we have a men's circle here, and we sit around a round. It's a tablecloth, so we are the knights of the round table cloth in King Arthur's court. And so there's so much synchronicity around all this sacred masculine stuff that is happening here in the heart chakra, where it can go be catalyzed and magnified as it goes into these powerful ley lines that are present here, these ley lines of the masculine and feminine, the conjunction, the sacred union ley lines that we are living.
I'm not sure if you know, Miguel, the sacred masculine site in Central Australia, Catajuda. it's close to Uluru, but this is the energy that's coming through with this series as well, and the inspiration for it all. So the energies, and we know the ley lines are connected from Avalon to Catajuda. So, you know, that's a bridge there that's coming through with this. So definitely. And Uluru is the solar plexus chakra, like Avalon is the Glastonbury's heart chakra. So very, very connected between here and where you are.
That's beautiful. I love that. And that's so aligned with my personal journey as well. That's where I am. My chakras are pretty clear, that it's the solar plexus, that there is some final clearing that is taking place. So with my solar plexus and my heart, so here in the heart chakra and the solar plexus, and this energy now going into the grid, maybe into the web, you know, maybe for the first time. If the internet goes down, then yeah, you know, it's not my fault. It's still down to Cernunnos. It's nothing to do with us, Gemma. We're all good.
Well, I'm excited if Cernunnos is ready to come through. Let's do this.
Okay, it's only usually for a couple of minutes, so it won't usually last too long. Asanacha shatakamannusu tusu kupushi. Imichichatara nachasanomu wakashana. Imana khoshutu pukuhayasha. Rana sato pukusuma hashimichinina. Onu khoshutaraya hashimi. Asatoku. Umunuharaya hashala. Amanacha moshutu pukushimi misa manacha turunu umushukupata imacha sharaya sana una sahasha takaya imanacha sharaya sakana numuhu minishina wahara unuhu shutuku imi asaha Racheshininacha manumacha misha usukutumanacha isacha machashana umacha ina isacharaheshatakamana humusu ishchanas.
I love that. You know, I've had a lot of past lives in Celtic, well, Scotland, Welsh. My dad's Welsh, and you know, I was actually born up the north of England near Scotland, so I know that's in a lot of my DNA. So I felt that very strongly, and it was very familiar for me. So, but it's beautiful because I think that's the first time I've heard light language or dark light language come from the masculine. I've always heard it through women before, and that was definitely a beautiful gift for me as a woman, and you know, to receive that. So beautiful. Thank you. I loved it.
You're most welcome. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I feel different now. I always feel different after as the energy comes through. There's a clearing for me. It's like the more it just wants to come through. If I'm walking, he sings, and I'm chanting and just moving all the time. And yeah, but it helps clear something in me. And yeah, the energy is, I can just do hands-on healing now. The energy comes through my hands, really powerful and really intense, and is having quite profound effects. So yeah, it's a blessing. And you know, this is part of his coming out. This is kind of part of Cernunnos' coming out. I recently just finished a really deep dive into my own healing, and yeah, the clearing as a result of that was like all of a sudden it's really coming up. It's like, yeah, okay, now it's time to bring Cernunnos into the world. You're ready now. Because it's been, you know, I've kind of been like, okay, what do I do with this? And do I want to? And what changes is this going to make to my life? And all this, you're here in service, Miguel. And this is clearly what the next step is in your journey. And you, yeah, fair play. You didn't anticipate this one. Not that there's any point in trying to anticipate anything as the veil thinnens and more access to the truth of what is here becomes apparent. Yeah.
What do you think his message was during that transmission?
There was something that, how can I summarize it? Yeah, because I always get a kind of, sometimes it feels like a blessing, sometimes it feels like an encouragement, sometimes it feels like I see you and an honoring. And this one was a kind of like, it felt like I see what is happening, I know what is happening, but now is the time. Now is the time to rise. Now is the time to do your work. You either get on board or you will be left behind. We have gone past the point of choices. This is the time that asks a great deal of us, and it is also the most beautiful and powerful and incredible, such a gift and such an honor to be here at this time. That is a sense of what his message is. These are huge journeys that we have ahead of us, but there aren't any options. This is the way that it is moving, and this is divinely orchestrated, and you may not understand it all, but crack on with it. There's work to be done.
Thank you, Cernunnos. What has Miguel got still to say that hasn't been said yet in this conversation? Your message to men, around men, masculinity. What haven't we touched on that your insights, wisdom, experience needs to be told?
Yeah. For the men, a good place to look if you're beginning this journey is to look at your relationship with your father. It's where a lot of your wounding will lie around your masculinity. Another thing which is really important, which is something that I witness here in Avalon, I witness that everything is changing, and the journey that I have taken in order to free myself and to come back to my heart and to reclaim my sovereignty is my unique journey. There's not one size fits all. This is also why I resist creating courses and content and stuff, because it's moving and it's changing all the time. And my frequency is changing. What I wrote, that's why I needed to read that piece about the Horned God, because it is a different frequency that is coming through me. As I clear my trauma, I notice that my voice comes from a deeper place from within me. It's rising more from my belly now. So breath work is a really powerful and a good tool for men to start accessing their trauma and to start getting into their bodies. It's a journey back to the body. Start going into your body. Don't worry too much about the talking therapies and about your head, because I'm sure there's been plenty. Well, no, that's not true. I can't say I'm sure there's been plenty of that, but plenty of thinking and in the realm of the mind. Yes, begin sharing, begin speaking to other people about your vulnerabilities, and that will help the right people, and that will help you clear the shame. That there is also something really big about your root chakra and the foundations. What I'm increasingly seeing is that our lives are a series of initiations. Life is one big ceremony. It's one big ceremony in preparation for the big ceremony that they call death. So we are here to travel these initiations. And one of the first initiations that the tribal people always gave to their boys was around survival. it was about overcoming hardship. It was about they would send out to fast or to hunt a wild animal, to provide food for themselves, to be able to stay outside without shelter, to create their own home, to be able to feel safe, that they knew how to survive in this dimension, on this planet, in this terrain. And of course, our young men, we have lost all our initiations and our rites of passage. So, but there is this rite of passage which many New Age young men want to miss, and that is the initiation of learning to provide shelter and to hunt. So essentially, in these days, this is to have a home that is safe and that to be able to put food on the table, whether you are working for somebody else or self-employed or however you are doing it. It is that I would say that it is the progression is to be working for yourself. That is the closest you can come to full sovereignty within this financial paradigm that is we are currently experiencing. But it's really key because that builds the safety when you can provide, when you have some sort of way of providing food and what you need and a safe container, a home, then you can begin to build and do the other work, go into those tenderer places. But if your root chakra is not clear and that sense of connection with the earth and safety in navigating the basic survival needs, then everything else is built on wobbly foundations. It can be done. I can see that something that it's being done in all sorts of different orders and so on. But at some point, you will hit a glass ceiling. There are many of the young men who come to the men's circle that have hit this ceiling, and they're doing their plant medicine ceremonies and they're doing their trauma release and they're doing their work and they're turning up to circle, but they don't have a safe place to live, and the income of money is not safe. So they're always in this semi-hypervigilant state, and the hypervigilant state is tension, and it's in the safety and relaxing and the opening that you can access the wounds and the trauma that is all stored within the body.
Is that because they're in survival mode, and when you're in survival mode, that's your priority, and there's no extra energy left for, the luxury of healing?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. The majority of the energy has to go into survival. So it's like, you will be tired just dealing with the survival bit, and it's unlikely that you will have much energy, to go into the healing and into the deeper stuff. So, ideally we arrive in our place, which, I mean, that's what happened when I arrived here in Avalon. I arrived here and I said, okay, I give it all up to her. I'm not going to try and create content or clients or anything. I'm going to let all that go. And all I'm going to do is walk the land and be of service to my community here and do the work, see the clients that are aligned, that are drawn to me, that divine orchestration brings to work with me. And then from that place, I could just relax totally. And that's what happened. It's like all of a sudden there's always been enough clients now, more than enough. And there's space for me to go and do my healing and to walk the land and to relax and to rest, because that's what I need to do. And there's such a strong program about, if you're going to heal the masculine, you have to do. You need to do this and do that and do that and do this and fix that. And it's like, often what us men need to do, the real medicine we need is to learn to do nothing and to be and to relax and to soften and just allow to arise from the body whatever needs to arise from that state of surrender.
Miguel, there's a lot of women that watch these Heart Warrior series because we do want to get a deeper insight into the masculine journey. How can we help our men who are on this healing journey? What advice have you got for women that want to facilitate the healing, but maybe unintentionally either do too much or too little? What's the happy medium? How can we help?
Yeah. Thank you. It's a good question. There's lots of different things. If you're a mother and you have sons, be aware of what I shared, and that, are your sons becoming emotional sponges for you. You know, it's like, it's not that thing of don't share any emotion with our children, pretend that we're all happy and everything's cool all the time. We need to be real with them and allow them to recognize that sometimes we're vulnerable and broken and lost. That also gives them faith, but that we're not giving it to them. We're owning our own responsibility. We're owning our own pain, and we're owning finding places, safe places, where if we need to emote and we need to share, then we do it at the appropriate places, not with our children. Another thing is something that I find, upsets me, is when I hear women saying, where are all the conscious men? You know, that us women, we're also conscious and we're doing our work, and where are the men? So my response to that is, if you are attracting unconscious men, then it is because you have a big father wound, probably still, which is mirroring their mother wound. And that is why you are attracting these men into your life. And while you still continue to look outwards and go, where are the men, and why don't the men do their stuff? Things won't change. Things change when the women start looking inside and saying, okay, I'm not attracting a conscious man into my life. Therefore, there must be work for me to do. I need to look inside. This is about my inner masculine. Because the men that you attract into your life are a reflection of your inner masculine template, of how your inner warrior is. If your inner masculine is clear and is a good, clean, aligned template, then you will attract that type of man into your life. But if you are attracting wounded men that have anger and fear and issues, particularly with women, then that will be what's going on to some degree. It may be a little bit, or it may be a big bit. But that's a huge piece. And if you can imagine, you know, that statement, where are all the conscious men, it can be seen as shaming for the men. It's like the men are trying to do their work. We have all, there is no innocent, you know, nobody got out of patriarchy unscathed. The men, the women, we have all been equally damaged and distorted and you know, wounded. It's the time to go beyond blame and beyond looking outside. We have to look inside, look to our relationships with our parents and do the work inside. Start building your masculine template. Start not being a people pleaser if you're a woman, particularly. Drop the martyr program if you're a woman, that I have to be there taking care of everybody else, because that taking care is disempowering your boys and disempowering the men. It is actually wounding them more, and it is narcissistic to some degree, because often women do too much for their men because they don't feel worthy themselves, so they need that external validation all the time from others, which is why they run around and run themselves ragged. And in that way, they teach their daughters, this is how you behave. You put everybody else first and honor everybody else, and you pick up the scraps from the table if you're lucky.
Beautiful
So there's
advice.
a few things.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Miguel. We'll wrap up now, but I just wanted to ask you, what's your highest value as a man?
Truth.
Hmm.
Truth. It's a little crude, but my understanding is that to a large extent, man in his optimum state is the embodiment of truth, with love holding space for that truth, and woman is the embodiment of love, with truth holding space for that love. So for me, truth and, you know, all the things, the offshoots from truth, integrity, nobility, honor, and all these things, and authenticity, vulnerability, all these things are all in the circle with truth.
That's beautiful. Are there any final words, anything we haven't touched on that needs to be said?
The only final words that come up for me is a blessing. Blessings are the word blessing just started to become part of my vocabulary a few years ago, and it's almost my favorite word, really. And I would just like to share a blessing for, you know, into the web, into this beautiful YouTube channel, into the hearts of anybody that should be listening, to keep the faith, to keep the faith. These are extraordinary times that we are alive. We are asked, so much is being asked of us, but we're not here. We didn't come here to do the jobs, the stories that society, runs such a convincing, story that that's what we're here for. Remember who you are. Remember that you came to clear your ancestral line so that we can create a more beautiful world for the children. We're not here for ourselves. And when we stop being here for ourselves, then life all of a sudden becomes really magical and really beautiful and really deep. And you will begin to experience and realize that what you called life before was like a gray, semi-awake sleepwalking, that we have been operating in this little bandwidth that is created by trauma. And as we clear the trauma, we begin realizing, witnessing, embodying the reverence and the sacredness of this incredible, beautiful experience that we have, which is also infused with a great deal of pain and suffering. But that's just at the moment. That is what we have chosen, and that is what was needed in order for us to make this shift into the back to the truth, to the optimum truth of who we are, and leave this place of the lowest possibility of what it is to be human.
A beautiful blessing. Thank you, Miguel. Where can people find you, Miguel?
They can find me on Facebook, Miguel Dean, Sacred Masculine. Yep, you will find me there. Please connect. Yeah, I also have my standard Facebook page, Miguel Dean, and my website is a good place to go, which is just migueldean.net. There are resources on there, lots of interviews and podcast series and blogs. It's another good place perhaps for men that are maybe beginning the journey or interested, and for women also interested in integrating their own internal masculine. This journey of healing the masculine is present for us men and women. It's not exclusive to the men, the same as we men also have a great deal of work to come back to our hearts and come back to the beauty of the feminine that we also are.
Thank you so much, Miguel. This has been a fascinating conversation. And I must also thank Cernunnos for popping in and gracing us with his masculine presence. So 2 for the price of 1.
Awesome. Yes. Wonderful.
So thank you, Miguel. If people could like and subscribe, share this message to people that you might think will enjoy it. And I'll be back in a couple of days with another episode of Heart Warriors. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.